Hello, Sitaram. Good morning and welcome again to another segment in the program in the series Addiction and Recovery. I'm your host, Ram Naresh Dwarika, welcoming all our brothers and sisters in Trinidad and Tobago and worldwide. And just to remind you, this program is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube and Facebook at the end. Will also be repeated on radio and TV Jagriti at 10 p.m. tonight. This is part two in our discussion. We have been talking about adolescent drug use. And, this is just an overview. Adolescent drug use is a critical issue, as this stage of life is marked by significant physical, emotional, and psychological development. Experimentation with drugs often starts during adolescence. This is driven by many different factors. So, as in the next few minutes, we'll discuss some of these factors that impact adolescents and could pressure them to use drugs. And one of the first things that comes to mind is peer pressure. There's a strong desire among adolescents to fit in, and this can lead to teens trying substances if their friends are using them. I would like to share a little bit of my own experience here. I grew up in a small little village in South called Gandhi Village, and I belonged to various little clubs, in my formative years. And I am very grateful for the opportunity provided by these little groups. I belong to a little group called Adventurers League, and then another one, a little uh, singing group, a little orchestra called Shankar Maya Orchestra. And in these groups, we learn how to conduct ourselves with meetings and how to record minutes. And I am grateful to the older boys in the group, at the time who had the knowledge to help us to realize some of these things. And but in those groups too, I had friends whose parents were alcoholics and would drink and smoke. And one or two of these boys are people that I looked up to. One of them was especially good in playing football and cricket, and he was like head of the team. But his parents drank heavily and they smoke, and he would steal sometimes his father's cigarette and bring it. And when we went to the river to take a swim, he would take out the cigarette and he will, light it up and of course pass it around. And I wanted to be part of that group. I wanted to prove to the rest of the group, although I was the youngest person in the group at the time. And all the more, there was that pressure on me to prove myself. I was tall like them, but I was not as old as some of them. And I wanted to prove that, I was just as good. And I would smoke, hide and smoke. And then I remember one day we were walking from the village to go to the nearby creek, Mosquito Creek. And one of them had a little brown paper bag and it had strong rum in there. He took a drink and others took, and then they passed it to me. And again, I didn't want to lose membership or appear to be that I didn't qualify to be in that group because they would often time refer to my, being a junior member, and challenge me to do things like them. And I wanted to always prove myself, being younger than most of them in the group. Even when we had wrestling matches, I would never say surrender. So these are the things I want to describe, that when young boys and girls find themselves in these groups, these are the underlying subconscious thoughts that are going on that can propel them to learn good things, like I did, learning how to take minutes and chair meeting and say in a point of order, Mr. President, and then speak. When the chairman recognizes you, I learned all those. But I also learned the other things too, because members of the group were doing that. We were not only learning to box and do judo and karate in the gym. These were all healthy things that we did: play cricket and football and tennis, go on camping trips. But I also learned the other things as well. So that although my parents were very strict, my father was not an alcoholic, or mother, and we were very religious. I went to temple and we did, my grandfather and great grandfather did puja every morning, the Trujal and so on. I saw that I engaged in these activities. I had a good social upbringing, but it is said it takes a community to raise a child. So while you might be doing the best to have your children, follow the straight and narrow path and do the right things, you have to be aware of who the friends are and what is happening in that group. Because in adolescent, children tend to start moving away from listening to their parents and would rather choose to listen to their peers. I have young children, and I have had that experience. And there's a very often children tend to become rebellious against parents, against authority, not only at home, but in the school, especially if they are rebellious at home, start to tend to become rebellious at school. And again, it is a time when there are so many changes happening in the young person's life. Their voice is changing. For the boys, you know, they have, for the girls, their body is changing, the hormones are changing. The same boy who was, they would play baby cook with, now they're seeing him in a different light. He's boyfriend now rather than brother, or neighbor. And similarly, boys and girls, they start seeing things differently. And these new experiences pose serious challenges in addition to the schoolwork and the social milieu, that they are exposed to. And I refer to Carnival in a previous segment. What young people see is what they live. This is what the society is propagating and celebrating. This is the way to enjoy yourself. In Trinidad, young people are being, it is demonstrated by even the parents that, look, the way we enjoy ourselves is to take a drink. We go out on a picnic and we have the drink. And every function, every celebration, Christmas, Carnival, Easter, you name it, wedding, even when people die, we use alcohol to help us to cope. So this is what our young people has become part of the culture, of the fabric of our culture. So that young people don't have to look for a reason to drink. And we know that adolescence is a very stressful time. And this is when a lot of people, because of emotional stress and not being, not, the stress of academic work and the other problems, I relate to, poor coping skills, if they do not learn how to deal with disappointments and failure and lose the match and did not come out first. There's so much pressure sometimes from the parents on the children, that a lot of children who are introduced to alcohol or marijuana socially realize that, hey, I could use this to cope, to help me to cope. And that is what happens eventually. Now, in addition to that, you have the media, and again, I must always congratulate this media house. Radio and TV Jagriti has sacrificed millions of dollars in revenue to be able to provide this program, one, and to refuse money to advertise alcohol and other products, cigarettes and all of that on this television station. Not many media houses are willing to do that. And some of them are so irresponsible that they don't even really care to schedule the program. These advertisements. They are scheduled when young children are looking at television. And we know today, with mother and father working, the television has become the caregiver, the babysitter. A lot of parents go and watch TV Tell the children, go and watch TV while they cook. They just came from work and they're busy, they can't deal with anything. Go on, and not only on the television now, on social media, the phone, the laptops, the iPads. Children have access to a whole lot of information and advertisements there that are targeting the young mind and misrepresenting the facts. They're always glamorizing the use of drinking and drug use. The advertisement target these population, targeting the women in particular, so that we also know while the government agreed to decriminalize and marijuana recently, and yes, there were discussions, and was part of discussion, but I am only one voice. And while they seem to understand, but if the majority say decriminalize, they decriminalize. Politicians are there to propagate themselves to remain in power. So if the population, if the majority says, go this way, and we've seen that happening worldwide, it is a political thing. So that in spite of the fact that there's tons of research now, it shows that marijuana and alcohol is going to have severe effects, deleterious effects on the brain of the young developing brain, the teenage brain. The child's brain do not fully develop. No child, boy or girl brain fully develops until they are 24, 25. But if you start using drugs at 13, 14, 15, and I can tell you, I was part of a research with the National Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Program, NADA, many years ago in the 1990s. And even then, we found that by age 10, most children, boys and girls, had already tasted alcohol in some form or the other, was given to it by a friend or a relative. So children are being introduced by their own relatives. And when we sit there drinking and the whole thing about do as I say and not as I do, or wait till you get married or we become an adult, children are not waiting to find out. They're not only curious about geography and history and physics and chemistry, they're also curious about drug and sex and all of those things. And if you are not going to give them the information in the school and in the curriculum and at home, they're going to find it on media. They can Google it and go on YouTube, and any kind of information now is available on the social platforms, on TikTok and all these other places. You can find out anything literally. You can access any kind of program. And children are much more au courant with the technology that the older parents are unable to track them. And it becomes a game, catch me if you can. So that a lot of children are growing up in family environment where there's still a heavy amount of drug use. They're learning, that this is the way to deal with depression, and they're not learning the appropriate way to deal with conflict and all of that. And so that there's a lot of stress in families to achieve, to decide, and all of that. And stress, if you do not learn how to cope with it, if you are introduced to drugs, and I remember in my own case, moving away from home, moving to Central because I got a job in Port of Spain, and I moved to live in Philly City, and I mean, living away from my family and home was stressful, but also it gave me a freedom and lack of supervision. All of that added up, and I found that when you take a drink, you can make friends very easily. Anyone can tell you that. And that was the beginnings of my journey into alcoholism. You understand? And from a schoolboy allowance now, I was getting a big man's salary, and my parents were so magnanimous. They say, boy, save your money. We don't need your money, Yeah, I saved my money for the first 2 months. But by 6 months after I was introduced to drinking, my salary was not enough. I had to be now doing extra things. I was carrying a trip of school children to Lakshmi girls and St. Augustine girls from Chaguanas to make extra money so I could supplement my drinking and my new lifestyle. And my parents, I mean, were so, me being the first son and all of that, gave me one of the best cars in Trinidad. I had an Impala Chev just to sport around and drink. I thought I had it made. I was going to work in a suit and tie every day, looking like the lawyers who were in the court where I worked, so that, everything just came together for me to support my alcoholism. And so it is happening for a lot of young people, especially in the middle class, in those students who pass for UE. In my days, there was a bar, I don't know if it is still there, Infinity on UE, where we go between periods and get high. I went to the evening class there to do my master's degree, and most of the time, well, thank God, when I did, I had stopped drinking. But in the earlier days, that was one of the places to hang out. And I also remember, there were bars from the Current area that would send a maxi to pick up fellas on campus, and you got a special discount and free transport and all of that to go and get drunk for those boys who staying on in the various halls, so that, you know the adults are complicit. The policymakers, to some extent, without realizing it, we are complicit in perpetuating this problem of alcoholism and drug addiction in this country by passing the policy, making it available, facilitating, like I just said, sending the maxi to pick up the students, giving the discount, and posting the advertisements and all of that. So that, it is very fashionable sometimes to just exculpate ourselves from blame and blame the young children, or the young person for the deviant behavior and the drinking and drug use, not taking responsibility for our own contribution to the problem. You understand? I think today we have to step back and think, hey, what am I doing? It is one of the reasons I have decided to literally dedicate my life to speaking about this issue. I don't know if I know it is, I get a lot of people coming to me and say, I heard your program years ago and I decided to stop, and I've been going to meetings and I've sought treatment, and some people are trying to do it on their own. And I know a lot of people coming out of this program, some of them make appointments to come and see me and get counseling, and they go to other counselors and so on. But the problem of alcoholism and drug addiction, I don't know if we are making a serious dent, because the little bit of effort that we are making, we can't really compete with these mega corporations that have so much millions of dollars that they can put into advertising, and they hire trained psychologists, to research and develop advertisements that contain in them subliminal messages that target the young mind. They know, these irresponsible professionals themselves, they for the almighty dollar, they don't care when they produce an advertisement how many lives that they're going to destroy. I mean, we have bartenders in the community in which I live, and we have people who are selling drugs and with impunity. And yes, they will argue that, look, we don't hold people and bring them here and force them to buy the alcohol. We don't hold them and pour it down their throat. It is their choice. Yes, but the major reason anyone, anywhere in the world, uses drugs, the first reason is availability. If it is not available, less people will use it. Although it is not a complete deterrent. We know from some countries that have the Middle Eastern countries that completely ban alcohol, that yes, people still go underground. In America in the 1930s, when they had the the abstinence movement there. People went underground and they had these speakeasies, they call them, and they started to boil their own moonshine. And in Trinidad, you still have some people doing bushram and all of that. But I must say that it drastically reduces the use. We know that the human being knows that there's another reality to be experienced. And I will speak about that in some coming program. You know, sometime when we, as children, we sit on what we call the Ferris wheel, the merry-go-round, and all of those things, or we spin, we feel dizzy, and we laugh and we enjoy it because we experience that reality. And sometimes when we sit in the class daydreaming, we slip into a kind of meditation and realize there's another reality to be experienced. And some of us, when we take that first drink, we get the buzz and realize, hey, there's another reality to be experienced. And so some of us eventually get addicted, trying to escape the painful reality of rejection, of depression, of all the stresses of the world, the mortgage and the jilting and all of those things, you know, that we face in normal life, seek escape. A lot of people seek escape in sleeping. And this is why insomnia becomes a serious issue. And I will deal with that as well in another program. And this is what really makes the utilitarian value of alcohol and drugs, you know, more pronounced. People find that they can use these things to slip into that reality. But I will just mention it. A lot of people in recovery now are learning and realizing there's a safe way that you can experience that serenity and that euphoria and that peace of mind and all of that. And it is simply in meditation. Anyone familiar with the program of recovery of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous will realize that eventually, after the first 10 steps of recovery, which we have discussed and will continue to discuss on this program, they're introduced to meditation in step 11, and they are now able to experience that beautiful reality better than they ever experienced under the influence of drugs. That is not destructive, that is not negative, and not only helps a person to stop and stay stopped from drinking and drug use, but also to experience the true nature of the self. You know, it is a spiritual experience. And at some point, time permitting, we'll discuss that. But for today, we have just touched on the subject of adolescent drug use. And we were looking at some of the predisposing factors, you know, why young people use drugs, peer pressure. We looked at the family environment. We look at the media influence. We look at some of the poor coping skills that a lot of people have that they cause them to start using drugs. And in the next program, we'll continue to discuss this and look at some ways of dealing with this. So again, I want to let our listeners know this program will be posted on Facebook and YouTube in a few minutes. It will also be repeated tonight again at 10 p.m. on Radio and TV Jagriti. And if you have any questions about it, you can call me at 671-3040, or you can text me at 768-5925, and I'll be happy to respond to you. I want to let you know that there are places available where you could get help in Trinidad and Tobago if you have a problem with drinking or drug addiction. All you have to do is call, and I will be happy to give you the information. Again, I want to thank all of you for listening, and those of you who are following the program on YouTube and Facebook. I also want to thank the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha for giving this airtime free of charge and facilitating this program every Thursday at 9 a.m. I want to thank Bimal Ramdhani and all the people at Radio and TV, the technical people at Radio and TV Jagriti, Jason Kalu and all of them who have been facilitating this program every week. so that we can share this information with all our brothers and sisters worldwide so that they may be able to get help if they have a problem with alcohol and drug addiction. Thank you, Sitaram, and goodbye for today.